Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about my cast for Survivor 50. The rumor mill is swirling over who's going to be on. The anticipation is palpable, so I thought I'd jump in and try my hand at putting together a great, realistic Survivor 50 cast. You can call it Survivor 50 in the hands of Idled Out. I had a few goals with my cast. Number one, put together a season which would be entertaining and feature iconic players from every era of Survivor. For the old schoolers, are they able to adapt to the much faster-paced game? There are no Wigglesworths here. The old school players I chose are all recognizable and iconic and will also play really hard. For the new era players, I asked myself, are they truly iconic and worthy of playing the game with these past legends? My new era picks are all killer, no filler. I also wanted to keep this cast realistic, balancing different types of play styles and different types of characters, creating a cast which will appease hardcore online fans as well as the most casual of casuals. This isn't my ideal perfect cast, but rather the best version of one they would actually conceivably put together. Finally, I also wanted to honor CBS's diversity mandate. This is one of the best production decisions they've ever made, and I hope to see it continued in returnee seasons. For this cast, I decided to go with 20 players because while I think Survivor 50 will probably be 18 players, we don't actually know as of the time I'm writing this how many players will be on. And this was already hard enough, and I genuinely could not cut this down any further. This shit was already impossible. I also didn't include any winners because we already had the all winners season. This cast is just 20 great and iconic non-winning Survivor players from every era, which I think would deliver a banger season and be the celebration of 50 seasons of Survivor that it should be. For this cast, we'll go in reverse chronological order from debut season as we take a look at each member of my Survivor 50 cast and why I picked them. Then at the end, I'll treat this as if this were an actual cast assessment and give you a male and female pick for first boot and winner. Who's on my Survivor 50 cast? Let's find out. The most recent player on my list is Genevieve Mushaluk from Survivor 47. Genevieve was so uniquely complex and compelling in Survivor 47. I found her struggle reconciling the emotional toll of her strategic decisions so fascinating to watch in an era where players come in undervaluing the social part of the game a little bit. She was also great at articulating that struggle. She speaks very methodically with a lot of thought behind every sentence, and that had me hanging on every word in the confessionals. Basically, she had a ton of both strategic sense and emotional intelligence, and is the type of player who would have success in any era of Survivor, and is, in my opinion, one good performance away from being an all-time legend. She's one of the most complex players we've had in quite some time, and I imagine most of you will agree that even if there is very little new era representation in 50, Genevieve is a must-have. Next, let's move on to Survivor 46's Q Burdette. It would be a big mistake for Survivor not to put Q on 50. One of the new era's breakout stars, Q was just a blast to watch and would bring so much chaos to this season. Like if these old schoolers aren't ready to play Survivor at a breakneck speed, Q will drag them kicking and screaming into the new era. How many times will he try to quit? How many alliances will he betray? How many Q skirts will he wear? Q's a fun player to watch because of his unpredictability. He's not really good at the game, at least in the traditional sense. Almost everyone on his season hated him, he targeted like every ally he ever had, and he constantly had kind of bad reads. Q is just distilled Survivor chaos, and that is why I love him. Well, that and the fashion. Next, let's look at Carolyn Wiger from Survivor 44. She's hot off a great run on the Traders, proving that her Survivor 44 performance wasn't just a fluke, and Carolyn is easily one of the most popular players in recent years. She's a Survivor unicorn. No matter how hard you try, you cannot replicate Carolyn. And Lord knows they've tried. I've genuinely never seen a player roll around on the ground as much as she did. Carolyn would be another great choice to represent the new era. She's a lifelong Survivor superfan who got to live her dream. She plays hard, and she's unapologetically emotional. Her recent turn on the Traitors shows she could go toe-to-toe with the reality TV greats. She's insanely popular right now, and she'd be a blast on Survivor 50. Finally, our last new era player is Jessie Lopez from Survivor 43. Jessie is such a talented Survivor player, if you don't count the challenges. He had so much power in the game and played one of the best Puppet Master games ever, seamlessly setting up other players to do his dirty work, hiding behind the big threats while always being a present social player on the island. And he did it all without really stepping on anyone's toes or causing any bad blood. Jessie is just straight up likable, and I think that's why he resonated so hard with audiences. He feels like a guy you just meet at the grocery store or at a barbecue. He had a great story and a relatable motivation for the money. Get Jessie on Survivor 50 before Mr. Beast kills him. Let's go back in time for our first old era player with Rick Devens from Survivor Edge of Extinction. I know the superfan mileage varies on him a bit, but a lot of casual fans love these idle Bloodhound players, and Rick definitely would have returned by now if he had literally any opportunities to. I think Rick is interesting to watch because he's really good at exactly two parts of the game: finding idols and showmanship. He was the de facto target for the entire EOE endgame, but he just kept finding idols and playing them with these dramatic flourishes that had the jury eating out of the palm of his hand. He's also great in the confessionals, got the most dad joke sense of humor ever, but even if you don't love that, you've got to admit, he's having the time of his life on Survivor, and the fun he's having is very clear. Rick was already given a second chance in Survivor 38 and made the most of it. I'm certain he would not squander a return on 50. Let's go one season back to my number one Survivor 50 draft pick, and probably yours too. Angelina Keeley from Survivor David vs. Goliath. Do I even need to say anything? Survivor was even chasing the Angelina magic in the early new era with Tori and to a lesser extent Ellie, and while they were both great and almost scratched that itch, they're no Angelina. She is literally perfect reality casting. The constant ego pumping, the dramatics, the blatant jury pandering, the pettiness, her desire to embarrass her enemies for no reason as they left the game. It just made for one of the most fun players to watch ever. There are players who are inadvertently hilarious, then play up the shtick on a return and the magic is gone. Debbie comes to mind. But I really don't think Angelina would fall into this trap. If I were casting this season, she'd be the literal first person I'd call. Let's move on to another 50 must-have, Christian Hubicki, also from Survivor David vs. Goliath. Who doesn't want Christian? The ultimate form of the Survivor geek archetype without all that irritating self-deprecation. Christian is just so lovable because he's smart, he's really funny, and he's confident. It's hard to get every kind of Survivor fan on the same page about someone, but pretty much everyone agrees Christian rules. In fact, one of the only real flaws in his game is he's so overtly likable, it makes him threatening. Like Devens and Angelina, Christian is one of those players who would have been back by now if there was any opportunity for that, and he's one of the most memorable and well-liked players of the 30s, despite only playing once. Casting doesn't need to do a breadth-first search to fill this spot. Put Christian on. Next, let's look at Tai Trang from Survivor Ko Rong. Tai is a very interesting player to watch for me because on the surface, he's this adorable older guy who's just there to pet the chickens and be wholesome, and he does both of those very well. But both of his seasons, he aligned with the villains and was sort of their lackey. It's so hard to pinpoint his game. He's incredibly chaotic and often listens to the last person who talked to him, but he also has the most confidence of any player ever at Tribal Council. When it comes to holding an idol, no one has bigger balls than Tai. He can probably barely sit down. Tai was super popular with audiences both times he played, and his game is straight up fun to watch, even when it's not making a ton of sense. Tai would be great representation for Survivor's Big Moves era on Survivor 50. All right, let's go back to the 20s for one of my two picks from Survivor Philippines. The first one being Malcolm Freberg. Malcolm is a great all-around player whose story feels frustratingly unfinished given his twist-laden early exit in Survivor Game Changers, and I'd love to see him get one last shot at Survivor hopefully without JT there to nuke his game. From an audience perspective, Malcolm is just the perfect Survivor player. Good-looking, athletic, great in the confessionals, and always willing to mix the game up and take big swings. You've got to have at least one golden boy on Survivor 50, and Joe sure isn't getting the call. So for me, Malcolm is just by far the best iteration of this archetype. Get Malcolm and the man bun back on Survivor. Next, let's look at Malcolm's Philippines co-star, Abi-Maria Gomes. I'm fairly certain Q would bring a lot of chaos to this season, but I just want to make sure. She's reportedly the sweetest person you'll ever meet in real life, but on Survivor, she is driven exclusively by spite and vengeance. God help you if you cross her, or think of crossing her, or even have the whiff of crossing her. She will move heaven and earth to get you out, and she will succeed. It makes her a truly scary player to play against, and there's never a dull vote when Abby's around. I'd love to see which Legends games she would end prematurely this time. Abby's another top pick for me for 50. All right, let's move out of the 20s and into the teens with Taj Johnson-George from Survivor Tocantins. Taj has one of the best fish out of water success stories on Survivor. She wasn't even really sure the show was real when she went out there. She'd barely ever even seen it. Then boom, she's at the Final Four with a ton of win equity. Taj was surprisingly quite good at the game, and her alliance basically ran the entire post-merge despite entering from such a bad position. But strategy schmategy, who cares? The real reason people want Taj back is because she is one of the most likable people to ever play Survivor. She's just so effervescent. Anyone who watched Tocantins fell in love with Taj. I know she's been asked back basically at every returnee opportunity and declined, but maybe the 26 days and relatively nice Fiji weather would convince her to finally come back. And hey, at least Cirie won't be out there this time. Let's go back a couple seasons and take a look at Survivor Micronesia's Natalie Bolton. A constant returnee also ran. She was literally the on-location alternate for Heroes vs. Villains. Let's get her back. Natalie was a crucial member of Survivor's most infamous alliance ever, the Black Widow Brigade. Why they under-edited her for like 3/4 of the season will forever be a mystery to me, but her late-game breakout in Micronesia is legendary. No one has ever gone from completely purple to talking about flossing with jugulars. And she's remained extremely memorable and a constant fan pick to return, despite really only having 4 episodes of content on a season that aired in 2008. That's star power. It's time to right the sins of the past, give Natalie her long overdue second shot, and actually give her some confessionals this time too, please. Next, let's look at Natalie's fellow Black Widow, an absolute icon of the game, the Amanda Kimmel of Survivor China. She played Survivor 3 times in 2 years, then fell off the face of the earth. But for a while, Amanda was one of the most popular players on Survivor. Amanda still holds the record for most days played without being voted out at 108. I'd be so curious to see how she would adapt to the modern game. She began playing at a transitional stage in Survivor's history at the dawn of the Idol era, and she was extremely adept at navigating Survivor during a time when the show was actively evolving. I think she'd be a force in the new era, too. She's got great reads on the game, she's always in the majority alliance, she just can't close at Final Tribal. Pretty much every Survivor fan recognizes Amanda. She would be a big get for 50. Speaking of Survivor China, let's get James Clement in here. You can't have Amanda without James. James was a huge fan favorite, and I'm talking literally. I think it would be so interesting to see James in the Colby Heroes vs. Villains spot. Absolute physical titan of the game more than a decade later. Is he over the hill, or does he still got it? I mean, he'll probably just get injured in a challenge and get evacuated again, but we'll see. James is also one of the funniest players ever. He's got this big, toothy smile, the most infectious laugh I've ever heard, and he's able to laugh at himself. I mean, this is a guy who dubbed himself the dumbest Survivor player ever, like right after he was voted out with 2 idols. I've got a lot of schemers on this list, but you've also got to balance it out with players who just play a straight-up loyal game, and James perfectly fulfills that. Plus, he'll probably help Amanda get to the end of the game again, and we all want that. I hate to load up on Micronesia returnees. It's kind of like having two desserts, but I'm also throwing Jonathan Penner from Survivor Cook Islands in the mix. This is a one for me, but I wouldn't actually be very surprised to see Penner on the actual Survivor 50. I adore this man. He's such an articulate confessionalist. He gives his whole soul to the game every time, but he's also pretty sloppy both socially and strategically. Like, it is impressive to have this much charisma and still become a tribal pariah 3 different times. Penner is an absolute icon of the middle old school era of the game. He plays super hard every time, even if he's not playing well, and I feel like his fan stock rose every single time he played, which is very rare. Penner's one of those players who you can say a lot about, but you can never say he's boring. He'd be a blast on 50. Finally, let's look at our last Micronesia returnee, Cirie Fields from Survivor Exile Island. I hate to make 25% of the cast Micronesia players, but come on, Cirie's gotta be there. What do I even need to say about her? She's the universal consensus best to never win player and possibly the most beloved player of all time. She's had 3 endgame runs in Survivor, which is something virtually no one can say, and she's literally never been voted out by a simple majority vote. Heck, last time she wasn't even voted out at all. There are very few players I want to see play for a 5th time, but I will gleefully be seated for any Cirie return because she always comes up with the craziest schemes and then pulls them off. Cirie is reality TV gold. Every show is trying to poach her right now, and Survivor needs to poach her right back. While we're loading up on Micronesia returnees, let's load up on Heroes vs. Villains returnees too. Let's see Stephenie LaGrossa Kendrick from Survivor Palau out there. Stephenie is one of the most iconic players of her era. Like, if you weren't there, Steph Mania was real. There were practically parades in the streets for this woman. In Palau, Stephenie had one of the greatest underdog stories ever. She just showed such impressive resilience and toughness by being the sole member of the doomed Oolong tribe. Then in Survivor Guatemala, the villainous, cutthroat side of her personality came out when she was in power. Then in Heroes vs. Villains, her shoulder came out instead, and she was out early. I know a lot of the online fan base probably won't be super excited for this pick, but Stephenie was so popular in her time, they brought her back the very next season as a tribe captain. She'd be a big get for 50, and I think she'd actually adapt very well to the new game. All right, we're in the pre-All-Stars era now with my next pick, Sean Rector from Survivor Marquesas. Sean's been in the mix for a lot of returnee seasons. He was almost on All-Stars, but now he's definitely a player I'd imagine every casual fan has forgotten. But I don't know, show a flashback to him hanging out with baby Boston Rob or something, and they'll get on board. I don't think most of America was ready for the kinds of conversations Sean was having back in 2003. Sean spoke openly about how things like race consciously and subconsciously impact the game. I think it'd be interesting to have him on in an era where discussions like that aren't so taboo. Beyond that though, Sean's a mover and a shaker. He was part of the most pivotal power shifts in Survivor history. He played Survivor with humor and passion, and I think he'd resonate even more with audiences now than he did all the way back in Season 4. Let's see Sean on 50. Next, let's look at Jerri Manthey from Survivor Australia. Survivor's original villainess and one of the most recognizable players of all time, Jerri is a 50 must for me. Jerri has one of the greatest story arcs in Survivor history. From hated man-eater in Australia, booed off the stage at the Survivor All-Stars reunion, to sympathetic near-winner in Heroes vs. Villains. In that season, she showed an adaptability and willingness to play the game she didn't her first time, while also retaining the bite that made her so infamous in the first place. The things that made Jerri so hated by the public in 2001 seem pretty quaint now, but I still love that she owns her role as one of the most infamous villains in reality TV history. I really wanted to include Colby here too because they played all 3 times together, but I genuinely could not fit him in. But I'll just say right here, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing the both of them play together again for the 4th time. Jerri was one of the first names I wrote down on this list, and I'd love to see her one last time. Finally, let's end things with a Season 1 player, Greg Buis from Survivor Borneo. I really wanted a Borneo player on Survivor 50, and we've already tapped the Toggy well dry. Colleen is MIA, and I don't have a ton of interest in seeing Jenna Lewis or Jervis again. I know Greg's at least been contacted for a couple returnee seasons, and he's someone I've always wanted to see play again. Along with Colleen, he was the first player to really thumb his nose at the entire idea of Survivor and reality TV in general, which made him a production nightmare. He was an absolute troll who was actively hostile to the idea of playing the game, but he probably could have won if he cared. We haven't really ever had someone like him ever again. What does his flippant, Gen X-y, devil-may-care attitude look like 2.5 decades later? I need to know. Greg was so much fun on Borneo, and he would be a great representative for the simpler days of Season 1. There you have it. That's my cast. If this were the actual cast of actual Survivor 50, my two first boot picks would probably be Carolyn and Rick. I'd hate to see either of them go early, but they both have such big reputations that I could just see them on the outs early on, without the social capital to save themselves. And my two winner picks would be Cirie and Malcolm. I know these are probably both pretty boring winner picks, but I think they're both just such great players who thrive on Survivor 99 times out of 100, and they're easily two of the best to never win. Maybe the two best to never win. But if you're gonna make me go with a non-obvious choice, I'm gonna pick Genevieve. Anyway, let me know what you think of my cast, and if you're watching this after the Survivor 50 cast has actually been announced, let me know whose cast is better. I think I put together a pretty good one, but hopefully theirs is great as well. Got nothing else for ya. What do you think of my Survivor 50 cast? Who would you add? Who would you cut? Let me know. Until next time, don't get idled out.